Kant's project and the groundwork is to give a rational justification for morality. His project in the first chapter or book of the groundwork is simply to explain what this thing morality is, to give an account of what we're talking about when we use this word morality. In other words, to elucidate the concept morality. We use that word. What does it mean? What are we talking about? And the way he's going to proceed um, is by starting with things that we all kind of agree with, that we all understand, that's intuitive to all of us, and then kind of refining it or drawing out from it this concept of morality. And so the way the first book of the groundwork works, Kant is going to give us a bunch of examples and make a bunch of claims that he thinks your average person should just find obvious and clearly true and intuitive. And then from these obvious or clearly true claims, he's going to draw out this conception of morality. The way he's going to begin doing this, the way he begins doing this is with this concept of the good will. Again, this is supposed to be something he thinks it's just going to be obvious to everybody. Everyone's going to understand this. And what he says is that the good will, so the good will is going to be important for morality in some way. We'll see which way in just a second. But the good will, Kant says, is the only thing that's good without qualification. Another way he puts this point, the good will is unconditionally good. It is good in itself. It's good no matter what. The good will is the only thing that's like that. One implication of this idea, a good will, a well-intentioned will, somebody with good intentions, right? The will of somebody like that. One implication of this idea is that the effects of a good will are insignificant for its goodness, for determining its value. That is to say, whether or not a good will produces good results out there in the world, that's, strictly speaking, irrelevant for whether or not the good will is good. If that were relevant, well, then the goodwill would not be good without qualification. It'd only be good on the condition that it results in good consequences or something like that. But look, no, a goodwill is good without qualification. So its results or its consequences, its effects aren't relevant to determining the worth or value of a goodwill. It's good in spite or despite whatever its effects are. Now, to help understand this idea a little bit better, it's helpful to look at his argument for it. In other words, it's helpful to consider his answer to the question, why think that the goodwill is the only thing that's good without qualification? Why does he think that? And his reason is that all other candidates fail. Think of any other candidate you like. Health, right? Somebody might say being healthy. That's the kind of thing that's just good, right? That's good. Good without qualification. Maybe somebody would even say money or wealth or something like that. Well, what Kant would point out is that no. Wealth is not good without qualification. Let's say you have a really, really evil person who's got a bad will, and now they have a bunch of money. Well, that's bad that they have a bunch of money, right? It's not a good thing. Their money is not good. It's not good for them, and it's not good for other people. It's not good that they have money because they're just going to use it to do bad things because they have a bad will. And a similar thing could be said about health, right? Yeah, health is in most cases a good thing, but it's only good on the condition that you have a good will, Kant would say. And if you have a bad will, health can actually be bad because it can enable you or help you perform bad things. If you were unhealthy, you wouldn't be able to do so many bad things. And so health, yeah, it's a good thing, but it's only good on the qualification or with the qualification that you have a good will. right? Every other candidate that you might think of as something that's good without qualification is in fact only good on the condition that you have a good will. And Kant goes so far as to include the virtues as things that are like this. So, kind of moderation in your emotions, a kind of, being able to control your emotions and not let them get the best of you and so on, right? See, you can see that as a kind of virtue. It's not good without qualification. That kind of ability to control your emotions or an ability to be kind of rational and plan, clever. Those things, yeah, they tend to be good, but they're only good on the qualification that you have a good will. If you have a bad will, they're in fact bad. And so I think a really good example of this is I don't know how many of you are familiar with the show Breaking Bad. It's getting a little old and passe at this point, but it's a very good television show. The main character is a guy named Walter White. And I think and he's like a chemistry teacher who becomes a real bad guy, dealing drugs and whatever, right? Doing all kinds of bad things. What Kant would want to say is, look, looking at that show, we have a perfect illustration of this idea. Walter White does not have a good will. He's got a very bad will. He wants to go sell drugs. That's bad, right? Don't sell drugs. He's incredibly smart, clever, knows how to get things done. He's able to keep his emotions in check and plan. He's able to manipulate other people or deal with practical affairs. He gets his health back. He gets a ton of money. All those things just enable him to go further with his evil schemes. It'd be better if he weren't healthy. It'd be better if he didn't have all that money. It'd be better if he weren't so smart. He wouldn't be able to do all this nasty, nefarious stuff, right? That's Kant's idea. The only thing that's not good on qualification like that, the only thing that's good without qualification is the goodwill. And that was the one thing that Walter White was lacking, right? Walter, this evil person, didn't have a goodwill. They weren't well-intentioned, right? And so all the other goods that they had were not, in fact, good. They were bad. They were made bad by their bad will. And so Kant wants to say this should, okay, this should be kind of obvious. The goodwill is the only thing that's good without qualification. That means its effects don't matter for determining its worth. It's like this, being well-intentioned, being well-disposed, having a good will. Okay. Now, as much as he kind of highlights its importance near the beginning of the groundwork, you might think that the whole work is going to be about the goodwill and how the goodwill works and so on. And in a sense it is. But that phrase, the goodwill, pretty much disappears after the first, 4 pages or so. I don't know how many pages, but after the beginning, it just goes away. Kant transitions. And so the idea is the goodwill is something that should just strike us all as kind of, oh, yeah, that's what's really good, or good without qualification, unconditionally good. Yeah, that seems right. Yep. What Kant notes is that a goodwill performs its duties. A good will is a will that conforms to duty. So goodwill, that idea, which should be intuitive to all of us, according to Kant, that leads us to think about this concept of duty because they're like related to each other, right? A good will is a will that performs its duties. Okay, and so now Kant, to try, the way he puts it, to really try to further elucidate what a good will is, let's look at duty and how duty works and what a duty is and so on, and acting according to duty and so on. And the idea and then what's going to happen is goodwill drops off the scene, and we're going to talk all about moral duties, really, is what he's concerned with, the duties that we have. And that's pretty much how it stays for the rest of the work. The goodwill never really comes back on the scene. But this is the crucial pivot, right? And so the idea is, look, the goodwill, it's obvious, intuitive, everybody. Well, look, goodwills perform their duties. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's obvious, intuitive, too. So let's talk about duty. And by talking about the moral duties that we have, Kant is going to elucidate what he calls the three propositions of morality. An action must be done from duty in order to have any moral worth. An action done from duty has its moral worth not in the purpose to be attained by it, but in the maxim according to which the action is determined. And third, duty is the necessity of an action done out of respect for the law. These three propositions of morality, we're going to talk about them each individually in subsequent videos. But this is his conception of morality. I said the project of the first book of the groundwork was to elucidate the concept of morality. This is his elucidation of it, these three propositions. Think of it this way. When we talk about morality, that concept of morality, what are we talking about? We're talking about whatever, I don't know, these three propositions. This gets at the idea of morality. And so what we're going to try to do, and all of these propositions, as you can see, involve this notion of duty. And so what we're going to try to do is understand what each of these propositions are. And by understanding what each of these propositions are, we're going to come to understand Kant's conception of morality, right? And that'll be the project of the first book of the groundwork. And then in the second book of the groundwork, we'll then see the kind of rational justification for morality, if you like, for this kind of thing, rational justification for this kind of thing that we just elucidated in the first book of the groundwork.